Welcome to the New Push Cyber Education Podcast, where we simplify technological concepts for the modern day business owner. Please like, subscribe, and share.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eli. I'm the CEO of MetaDialog, an AI researcher. I'm here today to talk a little bit about what culture means in the world of AI, what AI means in general to our world, and a little bit about how I think, and many experts think, about how we would use AI and how AI will influence our world and our culture, and how we can preserve certain aspects of our culture in that kind of world where we're influenced and surrounded by AI. Now, just about me, I'm from Israel. I've been doing AI for many years now. I've done my master's in AI in Oxford. My thesis was about explainable AI, which is something which is very dear to my heart. And I've started MetaDialog 3 years ago. And if I had to summarize what we do in just one sentence, it is your business, your data, your AI. It's really close to my heart, personalization. And culture is something that is a little bit close to that. When we talk about governments and about nations and about people, a lot of the time we also talk about culture. So Israeli culture is very different to Hungarian culture, to the US culture. But in the world of AI, sometimes it seems like we are losing a little bit of that, especially today. So let me maybe start just by maybe first we can talk about how I think AI will influence the world, and basically what is the difference between AI, which is something we are talking about since the 1950s and 60s, to what we talk about today when we mean AI. There's been different waves of AI before, but I think that the wave that we are part of right now is a little bit different. And I think it's really starting to be apparent to everyone that AI is going to be a part of our life. Now, we talked a little bit about what AI is. For me, the most interesting and relevant aspect of AI is intelligence. So, AI is a way for us to embed intelligence into a system. And the same way that we are now living in a software world, so we are surrounded by software from the screen to sometimes we have lamps that work on software. Everything around us is software right now. In 2018, Andrej Karpathy, which was the head of AI in Tesla, invented some sort of a term that he called software 2.0. So software 2.0 is just the idea that AI is going to be our next software, the same way that software surrounds everything around us and in some aspects manages our life. AI is going to be that thing now. So AI is going to replace and integrate with software. And all the world around us is going to be full with AI. From your fridge to anything that you do on a computer to everything. So in that sense, even today, we start seeing people using AI in their professional world. Now, I don't know how many of you used ChatGPT before, but many professionals today use it almost every day. And we can think about a number of reasons that you would want to use it in your professional and business life, even in a government setting. For example, if you're researching some laws and you want to write some new legislation or you want to research some idea, a very easy thing that you can do is you can ask ChatGPT to give you, for example, 5 examples of legislations about immigration, for example. Now, this process of working with AI, a sort of a dynamic system where on one end we have a human intelligence and on the other hand we have an artificial intelligence and we work together. This is just going to be more and more prevalent in the following years. If this is the case, then it's really important that the AI we work with represents our values and our ideals and our way of thinking. You wouldn't want to work with somebody whose ideals are opposite of yours. Let's say you work in a government. This simple sentence that I said, 5 effective legislations about immigration, is really dependent on what you mean when you say effective. So for some people, effective means that it limits immigration. And for some people, it means that you want more immigration. So you really need the AI to be able to understand and follow your way of thinking in order for it to be useful for you. You would not want it to, if you are pro immigration, you would not want 5 ideas about how to reduce immigrations, and vice versa. Now, the more AI goes into our processes, companies, governments, the more we are influenced by it. And then the more we are influenced by it, you would want it to match your way of thinking, to match your culture, to match your nation and country. This is the main idea here, and why we're very focused on personalization. Because just like you try to surround yourself with people that you like, and you like them because of the way they think, the ideals they hold, you would want to surround yourself with AI that matches that same thing. Now, why am I giving so much focus on this? Because this is really a big problem today. So if you go to ChatGPT and you try to have conversation with it, or with any generic AI model today, you would see that, and there's been research done on that, that it holds a certain very specific political view on the world. It's a bit of a left liberal American way of thinking. Now, I'm not in a position to say if that's correct or incorrect. I'm just saying that for some people it's correct, for some people it's incorrect, or if we don't use correct or incorrect words, we just mean different people have different morals and different values. Now, if that's the case, then we want to make that AI closer to what we think. Now, let's look for a second about how we train AI models. Now, this is very important because if you understand how we train AI models today, you understand why they are not personalized for us. Now, let me just switch to the next slide. It has a little bit of background that I need to give you, and then we'll also have an illustration that kind of ties this all together. So the way AI learns today is technically without human guidance. We call it self-supervised way. In the past, and this is the main difference between AI as we see it today, because even if you ask a company in 2015, do you use AI? Almost any tech company would say, of course, we have AI, we have machine learning. But the AI that we are seeing today is very different to the AI, that machine learning that we had almost 10 years ago. The main difference is in 2017, there was a very interesting research paper called Attention is All You Need that kind of introduced a new architecture for AI. Now, before we had to train AI with very specific data, somebody had to curate that data. Now AI learns itself. You just give it the web, you give it a lot of text, and AI can learn and understand by itself. You don't tell it exactly what to learn. It's giving a child an access to a library with all the books in the world and just telling him, please read everything that you have here and make create whatever ideas you have about that books, whatever you think about that. Because of that, because of the way it works, that means that AI can generate, and we call that generative AI because of that, any number of ideals and ideas that does not match what we think about the world. It many times makes mistakes, but many times those mistakes are not incorrect. It just doesn't match the way we think about the world. Now, I'm just going to show an illustration of that, okay? We have on the left a very big amount of textual data that we train the language models on. And then we have an LLM. An LLM is a language model. Then we train it a gigantic LLM training set, and also with specific knowledge base. But in most of the cases, unless you do both of this stage on your specific data, you get something which is not specific to you, okay? If you train your LLM on text in English, you would not get a really good representation of what Israeli culture is. Because to get a really good representation of Israeli culture, you need to train it on Hebrew. You need to train it on text, on things that people wrote that live in Israel. The same thing about Hungarian. If you don't teach your LLM on Hungarian data, you will get some representation from a different perspective. So you will not really encapsulate in the model your perspective. Now, what we do as a company, and we work with some of the largest companies in the Gulf region, for example, is we train AI models specifically on data that is culturally correct, that is related to the country we work with. And we, as I said, we worked with some of the bigger governments in the Gulf region, and this is exactly what we do. We get data that is specific and correct to their values, and we train the model in such a way that encapsulates that values. So that means that we needed a gigantic LLM training set But that set should not just be random Wikipedia in English. It should be all of the Arabic, for example, that is available in the region, so that model can reflect the Arabic values and the Arabic culture that is present in that region. What's the best way to preserve culture and preserve our way of thinking in a way that is soon going to be surrounded with AI? If you think about any company, and especially governments, if you train a model that is generic, or you use a model that somebody else trained not on your data, and let's say you're somebody, an official in the government that works on some legislations, as I said, and you're looking for effective immigration policies, you're going to get data, and the way you're going to get it is very fixed to the way that model was trained on. Again, as I said, you're going to get a very effective strategy for a left, let's say, liberal America way of thinking, which does not necessarily mean that this is the way you want to reflect. Now, as this AI integration into our world grows and grows, we will start being nudged gently by AI to think in the same way that it does. Because again, like working with someone that does not hold your values. If you think about AI as a sort of infrastructure, the same way that you would not, as a government or as a country, outsource the entire creation of electricity in your country and give it to somebody else to hold and basically have no influence over it. The same way, every country that wants to preserve its culture and wants to be really independent cannot outsource its intelligence. We are saying that AI is artificial intelligence. And the more ingrained it's going to be in our lives, the more we need to make sure that we are the ones who are dictating what is right and wrong and what is our way of thinking to the AI. Because we definitely don't want to be in a situation where an easy, let's say a low level situation is where we are just gently being pushed around by an AI that does not match our values. But of course, there's also the catastrophic situation where we are just disconnected from a network of intelligence and we cannot use that or leverage that to work with whatever we want to do. So if the entire ministers, a specific government, is working on drafting emails and sending proposals and talking to other people, and they're using AI to help them with all of that, the way that the AI is going to help them is going to be tinted with the data that it was trained on. And then, as follows from that, will tint their work with that way of thinking. So again, if we really want to preserve our culture, to preserve our way of thinking, personalization is key. You have to be able to adjust your AI to do what you want it to do. Now, before we get to a real life example of how we actually do that, let's talk about the technical things. Okay, in the illustration we've seen there's two main steps of let's say training an AI model. The first step is what we called pre-training. Pre-training is when the AI model is learning by itself different things from the data that we provide. In order for it to learn, as I said, a real representation and be really personalized to the company we're working with, we have to train it on data that comes from that region, on data that comes in that language. When we worked with one of the largest governments in the Gulf region, we trained it and we scraped. So we actually downloaded a huge amount of web pages in Arabic. The reason we did that is because we wanted to reflect the values and the culture of Arabic speaking people. Now, we downloaded more than 500 million web pages, and this is the scales that we are talking about. This is not collecting 1,000 pages. This is not collecting 10,000 pages. 500 million of pages, and in larger models, we do billions of pages. And we train the model on that data. Now, when the model is trained on that data, it learns and understands those values from that data. Now, the second part of that training, as we've seen in the example, I'll just get back to it, is where we take specific data and we train it, we adjust the model. It's like taking a certain new employee to your company, and that employee is maybe 30 years old, it has his values and understanding. And when he comes to you, you cannot change his entire worldview, but you can adjust it. to work according to what you want. Now, if somebody has a completely opposite worldview of you, you will not be able to adjust it. But if something is quite similar or just a little bit different, then you will be able to adjust it and make sure that it works the same way that you. So the first step is a huge number, hundreds of millions of web pages. The second is much smaller, is what we call instructions. It's sets of hundreds of thousands of instructions that the AI model should be following when it generates or when it works with another person. Both of these parts has to happen very locally in your company. Again, because every company has a different way of working, different values that they agree or disagree with, specific data about that company. So if you really want to have a personalized model, you have to do the first part in the larger scale. We have to train on your language. We have to train on the way that you think you want to be represented. And then the instructions have to be created very precisely for you so that, again, the AI can encapsulate and learn that kind of precise understanding of what you want it to do. So yeah, going back to what we did here is the first step for us was to scrape from the web hundreds of millions of web pages. We pre-trained the model on that, and this is a pretty big effort, okay? I don't know, but training models like GPT-3 and GPT-4 is millions of dollars. It's not an easy task. It's not something that can be done just on your home computer. It requires a very specialized hardware, usually hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of what we call GPUs. And we will get to that. We had the NVIDIA logo here before. NVIDIA is a very dear partner to us, and I will be talking about them as well in a second. But again, you need to pre-train the model on huge amounts of data in Arabic, for example. And then you had to create the instruction set by Arabic speakers, by people who actually understand what we are trying to teach the model and what worldview and what exact perspective that model is trying to encapsulate. So when we deploy it in some of the governments, it can reflect those values and it can actually help people and not be a deterrent. So we do those two steps. Then when we deploy that model, there's also a lot of day-to-day activity, okay? Because things change, legislations change. There are always news. There's always new data that you need to integrate and incorporate into the models. So the next step, and this is what we call RAG in the AI world, is Retrieval-Augmented Generation. Basically, we help the model learn and stay up to date with information. So enable the model to search whenever it needs new information and to integrate that information. But where we search and where we get that data is again dependent on what specific company or government we are working with. So I hope I explained it a little bit about why personalization is so important to me and why I really believe and think that unless you have a personalized AI model, you will not be able to fully leverage it in a business setting and definitely not in a government setting. You will be basically in the mercy of some other actor or an external actor that trained the model and built it according to his understanding of the world and the way that he wants the world to work in. Now, I think that if you really believe that AI is going to get a hold of our world, okay, all in, as we said before, if you really believe in that, then it's crucial that you understand the importance that the AI works for you, okay? Because if AI is going to be everywhere and surround us, and we are not capable of aligning that AI to the values that we want, we will be aligned by it. Because there are two forces basically working. One is our human intelligence and the other is artificial. So we need to make sure that that artificial intelligence is working correctly with us and not against us and not parallel to us, but in a different direction.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of New Push Cyber Education Podcast. Please leave your thoughts and comments below, and we will see you next time.